The envelope slid across the restaurant table with a soft whisper that somehow echoed louder than the celebration around us. Mom's perfectly manicured fingers pushed it toward me, her smile stretched wide enough to crack her recent Botox work, while my sister Madison held her phone up, recording every second. "This is from all of us, sweetie," Mom announced, loud enough for the nearby tables to hear. "For your graduation." The cream-colored envelope felt heavy in my hands, expensive paper that screamed importance. I should have known. After 27 years of being Erin Mosley, the family disappointment, I should have recognized a setup when it was gift-wrapped and served with my graduation dinner. "My name is Erin, I'm 27 years old, and I just finished my MBA 2 hours ago." The same MBA my parents said was a waste of time because I should have gone to law school like Madison. Before I continue, if you're enjoying this story, please hit that like button and let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. Thank you. The letter inside wasn't a congratulations card. It was 3 pages of legal documentation, and the heading made my heart skip. Not from hurt, but from dark amusement. "Notice of familial disownment," it read, like something out of a Victorian novel, except typed in Times New Roman and notarized by Madison's law firm. Dad cleared his throat, that same theatrical sound he made before his country club speeches, ready to explain why cutting me off completely was actually an act of love. The restaurant was packed with other graduation celebrations, families hugging and toasting, while mine documented my exile for their entertainment. I'd always been the problem child, you see. Not because I did drugs or failed school or dated questionable people. No, my crime was worse in the Mosley family universe. I refused to be molded. While Madison glided through law school, married a senator's son, and bought a house with pillars that looked like a miniature White House, I had the audacity to study business and talk about startups. Dad owned a manufacturing company that had been hemorrhaging money for 5 years, but somehow my dreams of entrepreneurship were the unrealistic ones. The joke was so rich, I almost laughed right there, but I kept reading instead. The letter detailed everything: removal from the will, cancellation of my health insurance effective immediately, removal from the family trust, even a formal request to change my last name. They'd thought of everything. These people who gave me life and were now serving me papers to prove I was dead to them. The reason buried in paragraph 2 was beautiful in its pettiness: failure to contribute to the family legacy and pursuit of unrealistic endeavors despite repeated guidance. Translation: I wouldn't work for free at Dad's failing company or marry the boring pharmaceutical rep Mom kept inviting to dinner. Madison zoomed her camera closer, probably hoping to catch tears. She'd been planning this, I realized, recognizing her big scoop face from when she'd exposed my diary to the entire family at Thanksgiving 15 years ago. Some people never grow out of their mean girl phase. They just get law degrees and call it advocacy. Dad was warming up now, his voice carrying across the dining room as he explained to me, and apparently everyone within earshot, about tough love and building character. Mom nodded along, though her frozen forehead couldn't quite express the concern she was attempting. Other diners were starting to stare, some with horror, others with that uncomfortable fascination people get when witnessing a car crash in slow motion. The funny thing about being disowned publicly is that it clarifies everything instantly. Every birthday they forgot, every achievement they diminished, every backhanded compliment wrapped in concern. It all made sense now. I wasn't their daughter. I was their project. And projects that don't turn out as planned get scrapped. The waiter approached with our entrees, took one look at the scene and reversed course like he'd stumbled into a crime scene smart man. Dad's speech reached its crescendo. Something about eagles pushing their young from nests, which might have been inspiring if eagles actually did that, and if he hadn't been reading from note cards. Madison prepared. She was live streaming now, I noticed, her phone angled to catch my face while keeping hers in frame. Always the lawyer, documenting everything. The family group chat was probably blowing up with real-time commentary from aunts and uncles who'd been warned this was happening. They'd planned this for months, I realized, recognizing the signs. Mom's insistence on this specific restaurant, Madison flying in from Boston despite claiming to be swamped with cases, Dad's rehearsed metaphors that he definitely practiced in his bathroom mirror. The letter's second page was even better, listing my failures in bullet points like a performance review from hell. Refused reasonable employment offers. Translation: wouldn't be Dad's unpaid secretary, demonstrated pattern of defiance. Translation: got my MBA instead of marrying Todd, the pharmaceutical rep. Failed to maintain family standards. Translation: drove a Honda instead of a Mercedes. Madison had definitely written this. She loved bullet points almost as much as she loved humiliating me. Her phone stayed steady, waiting for the breakdown, the tears, the begging she'd probably already picked out the filter for posting this later. Mom finally spoke up, her voice pitched perfectly between concern and condescension. She talked about how this was really for my own good, how struggling would build character, how they'd always love me but couldn't enable me anymore. Enable what, exactly? My education that I paid for myself? My apartment that I'd rented since college? The health insurance I only used for annual checkups? The irony was delicious, considering Madison lived in a house Dad bought and worked at a firm where Mom's connections got her hired, but I was the one being enabled, apparently. The other diners weren't even pretending not to watch anymore. A woman at the next table had her hand over her mouth, looking between us like she was watching a soap opera. Her husband was shaking his head slowly, the universal sign for that ain't right. A table of recent graduates across the room had gone silent, probably thanking their lucky stars their families were normal. Even our waiter was hovering by the kitchen door, no doubt updating the staff on the drama at table 12. I did something then that I could tell wasn't in their script. I smiled, not a sad smile or a sarcastic smile, but a genuine, relieved smile. Then I said thank you. Just that, thank you. Mom's Botox finally met its match as she attempted to look shocked. Dad's cards scattered as he fumbled for what came next. Madison's camera shook slightly, the first crack in her composure. Thank you for the clarity, I told them. Thank you for putting it in writing. Thank you for making it official. I stood up, folded the letter carefully. Evidence is always useful, and picked up my purse. Madison found her voice first, shrieking that I couldn't just leave, that this was a conversation, that I was being dramatic. The irony of calling me dramatic while live streaming my disownment in a crowded restaurant was apparently lost on her. Mom reached for my wrist, but I stepped back smoothly, 3 pages of legal disownment making the boundaries pretty clear. Dad just sat there, looking confused that his eagle metaphor hadn't resulted in me tearfully promising to change. I walked out of that restaurant with my head high, leaving them with the check and an audience. Behind me, I heard the murmur of shocked strangers and Madison's voice, shrill now, no longer performing but genuinely flustered that her viral moment hadn't gone as planned. My phone buzzed before I even reached my car. The family group chat was exploding, but I didn't look. My roommate Sarah had sent a single text. How bad was dinner? I texted back, got disowned officially with paperwork. Her response came instantly. Your family makes reality TV look boring. Wine is ready. The secret I'd kept for 3 years felt lighter now that I had no family to hide it from. My startup, tucked away under registrations that said E. Montgomery Enterprises, had been my real baby while my family thought I was playing around with little business ideas. The name came from my grandmother's maiden name, Eleanor Montgomery, the only Mosley who ever believed in me. She died 4 years ago, but not before pulling me aside at what would be her last Christmas and whispering that the family money wasn't worth the family chains. She'd also mentioned something about her will that made Mom nervous, but lawyers said nothing could be done about ironclad provisions written by a woman who'd outlived 2 husbands and knew her way around legal documents. Sarah poured wine while I told her everything, her reactions ranging from gasps to laughter to offerings to slash their tires, which I declined but appreciated. She'd been there through all of it. Every time Mom called my dreams cute. Every time Dad offered me receptionist work like he was doing me a favor. Every time Madison posted her perfect life on Instagram with captions about being blessed with success. Sarah knew about the startup too, had watched me code until 4 a.m., attended every failed pitch, celebrated every small victory. She was the sister I chose, worth a dozen Madisons. My phone rang, and the caller ID made me smile. My business partner, Arthur Chen, former IBM executive who'd retired early and decided to mentor hungry entrepreneurs instead of playing golf. He had urgent news, he said, the kind that required champagne, not wine. We'd been selected as preferred vendors for a major software contract, the kind that could transform us from startup to legitimate company. The client was being cagey about their identity, but they needed our exact solution for supply chain management. Arthur was practically giggling, which, from a 60-year-old man who'd seen everything in tech, was either concerning or amazing. The twist that made me laugh until Sarah thought I'd lost it? The anonymous client desperately seeking our software was in manufacturing, specifically in the exact industry where Dad's company was drowning. They'd reach out to us soon, Arthur said, probably within days. They needed us more than we needed them, a position I'd dreamed about but never expected. The universe, it seemed, had a sense of humor about timing. But the revelation that really stopped me cold came from an unexpected source. My mom's former best friend, Linda, who'd been cut off years ago for questioning family decisions. She DM'd me on Instagram with receipts I never knew existed, screenshots from 5 years ago, emails between my parents about sabotaging my Stanford Business School application. They'd called the admissions office, claiming I had mental health issues that would make me unsuitable for the program. Only a last-minute letter from my undergraduate advisor had saved my acceptance. They'd been trying to clip my wings long before tonight's public execution. Linda had more, evidence of them trying to get me fired from my internship by calling my boss with concerns, attempts to access my bank accounts for monitoring, even a private investigator report they'd commissioned to find dirt on my business activities. The joke was on them. The investigator found nothing because I'd been careful, keeping everything under Montgomery Enterprises, paying my taxes, building legitimately. My family had spent more money trying to stop me than they'd ever spent supporting me. If you're still listening to this story, please take a second to subscribe and hit that like button. Your support helps me share these stories, and honestly, knowing you're out there listening means everything. Thank you so much. The plan formed itself like code writing itself, elegant, efficient, and inevitable. Dad's company, Mosley Manufacturing, was bleeding clients because their supply chain system belonged in a museum they'd refused to modernize for 20 years, and now they were scrambling. Arthur confirmed what I suspected. They were our anonymous client, desperate enough to pay premium prices for immediate implementation. They didn't know E. Montgomery Enterprises was mine. The paperwork was clean, the website professional but vague, and my name appeared nowhere. Arthur found the whole thing hilarious, calling it corporate karma and offering to be my front man for meetings. Madison, meanwhile, was having her own crisis. Her live stream of my disownment had backfired spectacularly. Someone from the State Bar Association had commented that recording someone without consent in a two-party consent state was problematic, especially for a practicing lawyer. Her firm's senior partners weren't happy about the viral video featuring their letterhead on disownment papers. She deleted it. But the internet is forever, and screenshots were spreading faster than she could issue takedown notices. She'd texted me 15 times, alternating between threats and negotiations, each message more desperate than the last. I incorporated everything properly, making sure E. Montgomery Enterprises was bulletproof legally. My lawyer, not Madison, obviously, but a shark who'd graduated from Harvard when Madison was still in diapers, reviewed everything twice. We were positioned perfectly. A legitimate company with a revolutionary product, about to save a failing manufacturer who happened to share my former last name. The contract terms Arthur negotiated were beautiful. Upfront payment, monthly maintenance fees, and a penalty clause. If they tried to break the agreement early, it would either save Dad's company or bankrupt it faster, depending on how well they implemented our solution. Mom tried calling from different numbers, leaving voicemails that ranged from furious to pleading. Did I know what I'd done to the family's reputation? How could I walk out like that? Didn't I care that Madison's wedding, her second one, to another lawyer who looked like he was born in a suit, might be affected by the scandal? The woman who'd orchestrated my public humiliation was concerned about reputation. The jokes wrote themselves. She'd even contacted my old college friends, trying to get them to influence me. They screenshot her messages and sent them to me with laughing emojis. Team Aaron was stronger than she'd expected. The meeting was set for next week. Mosley Manufacturing's board would meet E. Montgomery Enterprises to sign the contract that could save them. Arthur would be there as my representative, wearing his best suit and his poker face. I'd be in the building too, in a conference room 1 floor up, watching everything through the video call Arthur would secretly have running on his tablet. Dad would shake hands with the man representing his daughter, begging for the help he'd sworn I could never provide, paying premium prices for the unrealistic endeavors he'd mocked. Sarah helped me prepare everything, creating a presentation that was technically perfect, but included subtle nods only my family would recognize, the Montgomery name prominently displayed, my grandmother's favorite quote about independence in the footer, even the color scheme from my rejected business proposal from 3 years ago when I'd tried to help Dad modernize. He'd laughed at that proposal, called it amateur hour, suggested I focus on finding a husband instead. Now he'd be signing a contract based on those same ideas, just packaged differently and priced at market value instead of offered for free. Madison's texts got more frantic as her wedding approached. The scandal was ruining everything, she claimed. Her future in-laws were concerned about family dynamics. The irony of her wedding being affected by family drama she'd created and broadcast was poetry. She'd wanted viral content. She'd gotten it. The internet had opinions about a lawyer who'd film her sister's humiliation for entertainment, and those opinions weren't wedding gift registries. Even Todd, the pharmaceutical rep, had reached out, saying he was glad I hadn't ended up stuck with him, that he'd only gone along with my mom's matchmaking for the free dinners. At least someone got something good from those awkward setups. The morning of the meeting, Arthur called me with barely contained glee. "Your father's been singing E. Montgomery's praises all week," he said. "Called us the future of manufacturing technology. His board is desperate. They've already lost 3 major clients this month." I sat in my office. Yes, I had an actual office now, not the coffee shop corner I'd started in, watching Arthur adjust his tie on video call. He looked like every corporate savior Dad had ever hired. Silver-haired and distinguished, the kind of man who belonged in boardrooms and knew it. The perfect front man for the perfect revenge. That wasn't even revenge, just business. Dad walked into that conference room like he owned the world, even though his world was crumbling. Through Arthur's hidden tablet camera, I watched him glad hand the E. Montgomery representative, talking about synergy and partnership like he hadn't just disowned his daughter for pursuing exactly this kind of innovation. The contract was 40 pages of beautiful legal language that basically said, "You need us more than we need you." And the price reflects that Dad didn't even flinch at the numbers. When you're drowning, you don't negotiate with the life preserver. Madison's professional world was imploding in real time. The state bar investigation had officially begun, and her firm had placed her on administrative leave pending review. Her big wedding was in 2 weeks, and vendors were mysteriously becoming unavailable as news spread through the social circles Mom had cultivated for decades. Turned out that publicly disowning your daughter was considered gauche, even among people who thought fish forks were a personality trait. Madison had texted me that morning, "You're ruining my life." I'd responded with a screenshot of her live stream titled Family Accountability Moment, with 2 million views and counting. The meeting was going perfectly. Arthur presented our software solutions with the passion of a man who'd spent 40 years in tech and finally found something revolutionary. Dad's board members were nodding, desperate for anything that could stop the hemorrhaging. Then came the moment I'd been waiting for. Dad asked about the owner wanting to meet the genius behind E. Montgomery Enterprises. Arthur smiled, said the owner preferred to remain private but sent their regards and looked forward to a profitable relationship. Dad actually said, and I recorded this, "I wish my daughter had half this person's business sense, but some people are born for greatness. Others just dream about it." Mom had started showing up at my apartment building, waiting in the lobby until security escorted her out. She'd lost 15 pounds and her Botox was wearing off, revealing worry lines I'd never seen before. The society pages had stopped featuring her, and her book club had politely suggested she take a sabbatical after the video went viral. She'd gone from queen bee to pariah in 3 weeks, a fall from grace that would have been sad if she hadn't orchestrated my fall first. She'd left a note under my door, "Family forgives." I'd left it in the recycling bin where it belonged. The contract signing was beautiful. Dad's signature on documents that would save his company but cost him everything he'd refused to give me freely: respect, money, and acknowledgement of value. Arthur shook hands, promised implementation within 30 days, and walked out with a check that would fund my company for the next 2 years. Dad called his golf buddies from the conference room, bragging about the deal he'd just made with the most brilliant tech mind he'd ever encountered. If only he knew that brilliant mind had lived in his house for 18 years, begging for a chance to prove herself. That afternoon, another piece fell into place. My grandmother's lawyer called, the one who'd been instructed to wait until a specific condition was met. The condition? Me being formally disowned by my parents? Grandma Eleanor had updated her will 6 months before she died, after overhearing my parents discussing how to keep me dependent. She'd left everything to me, not just money, but the family home my parents lived in, claiming they were caretakers when they actually had no ownership. The house they'd been mortgaging to keep Dad's business afloat, they didn't own it. I did. Or I would, as soon as the lawyer filed the paperwork making the disownment official. The implementation meeting was scheduled for Monday morning. Arthur insisted I attend. Hidden in plain sight as his assistant taking notes, I wore glasses, pulled my hair back differently, became invisible in the way service people become invisible to people like my parents. Dad walked right past me in the hallway, didn't even glance at the woman carrying coffee and tablets. 3 years of building a company had taught me that rich people don't see the help, and today that blindness was my superpower. Madison's wedding implosion had reached critical mass. Her fiancé, a corporate lawyer who valued reputation above all else, had called off the engagement after the Bar Association announced formal ethics charges, recording a family member without consent, broadcasting their humiliation for entertainment, and using law firm resources to create disownment documents. Turns out the legal community frowned upon all of that. She'd been fired, not just suspended, and her license was under review. She'd texted me 300 times, each message more unhinged than the last, blaming me for playing victim when she was the one who'd pressed record. The reveal happened in the most boring, beautiful way possible. Dad was praising the software to his board, demonstrating how it had already improved efficiency by 30% in trial runs. He mentioned wanting to meet the owner again, to thank them personally for saving his legacy. Arthur, my beautiful theatrical partner, couldn't resist. "She's actually here today," he said casually. She wanted to see the implementation personally. Dad's face lit up like Christmas, ready to charm and network. Then I stood up from the corner where I'd been typing notes, removed my glasses, and smiled. "Hello, Dad." The silence was so complete you could hear the air conditioning humming. Dad's face went through the entire spectrum of emotions: confusion, recognition, denial, anger, and finally a dawning horror as he understood his board members looked between us, putting pieces together, remembering the viral video several had seen and discussed. One board member, a woman who'd always seemed sharp, actually started laughing. "The daughter you said had no business sense?" she asked. "This is delicious." Mom had been CC'd on the email Arthur sent after the meeting, explaining the ownership structure of E. Montgomery Enterprises and mentioning that the building they were sitting in, my building now, would be handling all future meetings. She called 17 times in 5 minutes. I didn't answer, but I did text her a photo of the contract with Dad's signature, right below a clause stating that any attempt to break the agreement would result in immediate forfeiture of all software rights and triple damages. They couldn't afford to break that clause. They couldn't afford to even think about breaking it. The grandmother's will revelation happened that afternoon, delivered by her lawyer to my parents' home, my home technically, while they were still reeling from the morning's reveal. The doorbell camera I'd had installed, I owned the house after all, captured Mom's face as she read the eviction notice. 30 days to vacate the house she'd hosted charity galas in, the house she'd bragged about to her society friends, the house she thought she owned. It was mine, had been mine the moment they'd signed those disownment papers. Grandma Eleanor had played a long game, and I was the winning move. Madison showed up at my office that evening, mascara streaking her face in very unlawyerly streams. Security called up, but I let her in. Sometimes you need to see the breakdown to believe it's real. She sat across from my desk, my actual executive desk in my actual CEO office, and tried to negotiate. She'd forgive me, she said, if I dropped the bar complaint. I hadn't filed one. Her live stream had done that itself. She'd let me back in the family if I saved Dad's company for free. She'd even apologize publicly if I gave her a job. The delusion was so complete I almost felt bad for her. Almost. 3 months later, the karma had compounded interest better than any investment portfolio. Dad's company survived barely, but the contract terms meant 60% of his profit went to software licensing and maintenance. He was essentially working for me, though he'd never admit it. He'd tried to break the contract once, shopping around for cheaper alternatives. The penalty clause hit so hard his board almost removed him as CEO. He'd aged 10 years in 3 months, the kind of aging that comes from realizing you've bet against the wrong horse, and the race is already over. Madison's fall was complete. Disbarred, unemployed, and socially radioactive, she'd moved back in with our parents just as they were being evicted from the house. The 3 of them rented a 2-bedroom apartment in the same complex where I'd lived during college, the one Mom had called depressing. When she'd visited once and never returned, Madison worked at a department store now, selling designer handbags she could no longer afford. A customer recognized her last week from the viral video and asked for a selfie with the worst sister on the internet. She'd called me crying I didn't answer. Mom's society friends had completely abandoned her. Turns out that publicly disowning your successful daughter was worse than any scandal they could imagine. The book club formally expelled her after she tried to spin the story as tough love gone wrong. Her charity committees removed her name from letterheads. The country club revoked her membership after the dues check bounced. She'd started a blog about redemption and family healing that had 12 followers, most of them bots. Her Botox had completely worn off, revealing a face that had forgotten how to smile genuinely, if it ever knew how. The business journals picked up the story when our company went public. From disowned to IPO, the E. Montgomery success story ran in Forbes, featuring a photo of me ringing the opening bell at the New York Stock Exchange. The article mentioned the family connection briefly, professionally, but the internet connected the dots. Dad's LinkedIn profile disappeared overnight. Madison's Instagram went private after people started commenting contract clauses on her old family photos. Mom tried to claim credit in a Facebook post, saying she'd practiced strategic motivation. The ratios were brutal. I donated the family house to a charity that helps homeless LGBTQ youth kicked out by their families, making sure the press release mentioned it was my childhood home, recently inherited. The symbolism wasn't subtle, but subtle had never been my family's strong suit anyway. The charity renamed it Eleanor House after my grandmother, and I attended the dedication ceremony. Local news covered it. And there, in the background of one shot, was Mom watching from across the street. She looked smaller than I remembered, like disowning me had somehow diminished her too. The sweetest revenge came in the smallest moments. Dad at an industry conference, having to watch me give the keynote about innovation and family businesses, Madison at the mall where she worked, watching me shop with Sarah, who loudly asked if I wanted to check out the sales at her store, Mom running into me at the grocery store and me walking past like she was a stranger, which legally she was. They'd wanted me gone, erased, removed from their lives like a typo in their perfect family narrative. They got their wish, just not how they'd imagined it. The wedding invitation surprised me, addressed to E. Montgomery plus guest. I almost threw it away, thinking Madison had lost her mind completely, until I saw the names. It was from James, the pharmaceutical rep Mom had tried to set me up with, marrying someone who wasn't me. The note inside made me laugh. Thanks for dodging that bullet so I could find real love. Your mom still thinks we'd have been perfect together. She RSVP'd something about a scheduling conflict. We both know why she's really not coming. I sent a nice gift and a note saying I had a business conflict, which was true. I was busy succeeding. Arthur and I were planning our next venture, something bigger, something that would make the first company look like a practice run. He'd become the grandfather I'd never had, protective and proud in ways my actual family never was. At the IPO party, he'd given a toast that made me cry, about believing in yourself when no one else does, about choosing your family, about the sweetest success being the kind nobody can take away from you. The video of that toast went viral too, but this time for the right reasons. Sarah helped me move into my new place, a penthouse with a view of the city and, ironically, a clear sightline to Dad's old office building, the one he'd have to sell soon to cover losses. We drank champagne on the balcony, watching the sunset paint the sky gold, and she asked if I ever regretted how it went down. I thought about it, really considered whether I'd change anything if I could go back to that graduation dinner. The answer was no. They'd given me the greatest gift possible, freedom from seeking their approval. The disownment letter, framed in my office now, was my diploma from the University of Hard Truths. Dad sent a letter last week through his lawyer, not admitting wrong, but suggesting a business reconciliation for the good of both enterprises. I had my lawyer respond that E. Montgomery Enterprises didn't engage in partnerships with companies that had shown bad faith in previous dealings. The legal language for "you made your bed" was beautifully cold. He'd have to watch his daughter's company grow while his shrunk, a gap that would only widen with time. Every success I had would be a reminder of the opportunity he'd thrown away with both hands and a notarized letter. Madison had started therapy, according to a mutual friend who felt sorry for her. Good for her, honestly. Maybe she'd figure out why she'd needed to destroy me to feel big. Maybe she'd understand that being the favorite child meant nothing when the parents weren't worth impressing. Or maybe she'd just learned to live with being the sister who went viral for all the wrong reasons. Either way, it wasn't my problem. I'd been disowned, remember? Her healing journey was as disconnected from me as everything else in that family. Mom posted old family photos on Facebook sometimes, the ones from before everything fell apart, with captions about cherishing memories and family is forever. The comments were always the same. People asking where I was, why recent photos never included me, if everything was okay. She'd delete the posts within hours, but the internet had already screenshot them. Someone had started a Reddit thread called Narcissist Parent Bingo, using her posts as examples. I didn't participate, but I did read it sometimes when I needed to remember that their behavior wasn't normal, wasn't love, wasn't my fault. 3 years after that graduation dinner, I stood in my office looking at the wall of achievements, magazine covers, award certificates, photos with business leaders who actually respected me. None of it would have happened if my family had gotten their way. I would have been a secretary in a failing company, married to someone Mom chose, living a life designed by committee. Instead, I was exactly who I'd fought to become, successful, not despite my family's rejection, but because of it. The disownment letter had been meant to break me. Instead, it had been my key to the cage I hadn't even realized I was in. The ending came not with confrontation, but with indifference. I saw Dad at a coffee shop looking tired and 10 years older, scrolling through his phone at a corner table. He saw me, started to stand, maybe to speak or apologize or negotiate. I walked past him to the counter, ordered my coffee, and left. No drama, no scene, no acknowledgement. He was a stranger who happened to share some DNA, nothing more. The barista called out my order. "Coffee for Montgomery!" I smiled, taking my cup with my chosen name on it, walking into a future that was entirely mine. They'd disowned me, but I'd claimed myself. When family shows you who they are, believe them, and then become who you're meant to be.